For the President, National Parents Teachers Association of Nigeria, Alhaji Haruna Danjuma, the local governments should not be allowed to fund the basic education because it will have a ripple effect on the sector.
NUT are doing the right thing. The right thing in the sense that for them to be under, or rather the salary to be paid by the local government, there's problem. We had that bad experience years back, not until when it was changed to the suburb to be paying them their salary at the state level. So since the taking over of that, never we had problem with their salaries in all the states. But now that there are this kind of changes, of course, NUT must find it very, very shocking to be getting their salary through local government, because you will agree with me that some years back, local government used the salaries of the teachers for other purposes, one of which is political purposes.
He's also worried about the so-called free education at the basic education levels in the country.
Kept asking how free is free, because if you are talking of free education, it's expected of the government to give everything. Things like teaching materials, available enough teaching materials and learning materials. They're different from teaching and learning material. Teaching and learning material. The teaching material is for the teachers. You think that you use to prepare themselves for imparting knowledge or giving lectures to our children. And there's also the learning material. And I want you to know that there are responsibilities, lies on government. One of which is to provide schools, employ teachers, and of course provide the teaching materials. And the responsibility on us as parents is to, of course, produce the children. Well, we done that, and the government asked us to give our children to school. We have gone into that. We have done that, and the other responsibility on us is to prepare our children, first of all, for the school. Feed them well, clothing them well, clothing including a uniform for them to use when going to the school, and of course look after their health and then feed them well. So now the government had taken over our responsibility, believing that they are doing us favors, thinking that there are parents who cannot do that. And I want you to believe that no matter how poor the family are, they must feed, not even if it is once per day. That's what they are called 010 or 100 or 001. Whatever the case may be, they must find themselves eating. And then why must government think of feeding our children at school once a day, 5 days a week? It is our responsibility. The money used for feeding our children in our schools can be used for taking good care of our teachers. Can be used, the part of money can be used to make available learning materials for our children. Since it is free education, it is expected of that every child of ours in public schools can get the required learning materials, including textbooks, including math sets, including whatever. The textbook they are talking about, it is given to our children when they are in the schools. Once the school hour is over, the school authority will retrieve those textbooks, and only for our children to get back home empty-handed.
Mrs. Moturayo Alaka, coordinator at the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism, says the challenges of basic education is already at the red flag level, and if nothing is done, it may be dangerous for the country.
For me, the consensus with stakeholders is that there's a red alert on basic education in the country. There's a red alert because the quality of teachers is poor, terribly poor. One of the contributors did mention that in some states, they did primary 5 tests for teachers, and barely 20% of them passed primary 5 tests. So if the person who is teaching our children cannot pass primary 5 tests, what is the person doing teaching? We have out-of-school children, over almost 9 million of them that are out of school, mostly in northern Nigeria. We have challenges with quality of education. You must have read in the report lately the agitations on curriculum and the kind of books that are being used in the schools. Apart from the issue of sexual education, which was raised, there's also a general poor quality of books. You see books that do not meet up to standards that have been used in this country in the past. So from our own view, the general consensus is that there's a red alert. Basic education is supposed to be the foundation for education for any child. And so if the basic education is wrong, development would be wrong eventually, because these are the builders of our future. If the education is bad, their output would be bad. So the consensus was that we all need to come together, all stakeholders, government, private sector people, non-governmental organizations, generally civil society, and we have to begin to do something concrete. We have to move away from the we and they analogy of solving issues to say, what are we going to do? Get our hands dirty and really address the issues affecting basic education in Nigeria, because our future really is at risk.
She wants proper funding of primary and junior education, but not by the local government authority.
Basic education in Nigeria is provided for on the concurrent list, which means that the federal government, the state government, and the local government have responsibilities shared responsibilities, as a matter of fact, for taking care of basic education in the country. However, the local government system of the country is quite bedeviled, and as we have now, most of the local governments are running by administrators. They don't have elected leaders, and they are not as effective because the state governments have their funding, and they are the ones that make the allocation for local governments. However, in the federal government budget and also in the state government budget, there's provision for education generally, which basic education is part of in those budgets. And that budget is supposed to fund basic education generally. The Universal Basic Education Commission is then set up. It was set up constitutionally in 2004, and that is by the act was passed in 2004. However, it has been on since 1999. It was basically set up to support states to do their work in administering basic education in the country. And part of what they do is to provide some counterpart funding, which would help to support structural development of basic education in the country. However, it's a 50-50% fund. It means that the state government must first have their own part of the money, guarantee that they have it, and then the UBEC would provide the other part of it. Right now, the local government has no capacity to fund basic education, except the arrangement on ground changes. There's nothing they can do about it. So as it is right now, it is not practicable that the local government will fund basic education. Some time ago, there was a court ruling that that interpreted the statement of the Constitution to mean that the state government was more in charge of basic education in the country. The challenge that UBEC has had, according to records even available on their website, is that most of these state governments are not able to provide what is needed, their own counterpart fund, to be able to access the other 50% of the country. And because of that, this has affected so there is money available to develop basic education, but the states are not able to provide a counterpart fund that shows commitment on their part to also develop basic education in the country. That basic education can actually be enough for a person to have enough in life. So if you have basic education and that's all the education you got, it means that you can read, it means that you can write, it means that you can write good letters, it means that you can communicate, it means that you have all the basics. Every other thing had to read. If you do science in primary school, later you do biology, chemistry, physics in life, but really you have the foundation. And if your foundation is wrong, if somebody cannot speak well from primary school, it is very difficult for that person to correct it later in life. As a matter of fact, they say that after age 10 or so, it is difficult to put anything new in a child, apart from build on what they already have. So it is our future. It is what we need to address. Even to make tertiary education right, to make secondary education right, we need to go back to that foundation of basic education and ensure that our children get the best at that level.
It's the view of experts that something meaningful should be done in the area of retraining of teachers by the federal, state and local governments, because the quality of teaching in the country is allegedly nothing to write home about. And if basic education is not properly funded, the country will be built on a shaky foundation.